So Russ, thanks so much for having us here. Tell us, Russ, what do you do for Mercy Ships?
For Mercy Ships, I've been with the organisation for 26 years, or 20 years out of the last 26, both serving on board our ships as a volunteer. More recently, for the past 12 years, based here at the International Support Centre for Mercy Ships here in East Texas. But I have the pleasure of managing many of our corporate partnerships. So the official title would be Director of Corporate Development.
Wow. And for those people that are watching that maybe don't know what Mercy Ships does, why don't you tell us the mission of Mercy Ships?
Absolutely. Mercy Ships is a global organisation. Started in 1978 and we've been operating ever since. We own and operate the world's largest charitable hospital ship based in West Africa. Our ship is completely staffed by volunteers. So whether you're the captain, the chief engineer, someone that cooks the food on board, or you work in the onboard hospital, everybody volunteers their time. Our volunteers come from about 40 different nations around the world. Some volunteer for a few weeks, some for many months. And our goal is to provide the highest level of healthcare to the poorest of the poor. People that have little or no access to any type of medical care in their own country come to Mercy Ships when our ship is in port. We sit in port for 10 months at a time in sub-Saharan Africa. And we provide over 2,000 to 2,500 free life-changing surgeries every year. But our most important thing about Mercy Ships is we utilise the ship as a training platform. And so when we invite on the local people for their free surgery, we're also in partnership with the Ministry of Health to bring on local healthcare professionals to train them to do what we do. So we can leave behind a higher trained staff in the main hospitals throughout the country once our ship departs.
So 2,000 to 2,500 surgeries per year that you guys do directly, but then if you factor in the people that you've trained that go on to do surgeries themselves, it could be tens of thousands.
Absolutely. We train anybody from the surgeon to OR nurses, biomedical technicians, people that sterilise the surgical instruments. We're trying to train the whole team. And we put the team back into their own facility once they've spent time on board the ship in our mentoring programs. So yeah, every year about 1,500 healthcare professionals receive some type of training on board Mercy Ships. Sometimes that's just 1 or 2 days of training, and sometimes that's what we call a mentorship. So we're mentoring them for 3 months at a time, and the real goal is for them to be able to provide a high level of care to their own people. We want to do ourselves out of a job. You know, how many companies in this world want to do themselves out of a job? But that's Mercy Ships' goal, is to do ourselves out of a job and move on to the next nation. Because there's many needs in the world, and certainly in the continent of Africa is really close to our hearts.
And I'm blown away by just the nobleness of the cause and the individuals that volunteer weeks, months at a time on Mercy Ships. So what was your personal story of how you discovered Mercy Ships and made the decision to volunteer for months or years?
Absolutely. Every volunteer has their own story. Each year, about 1,200 volunteers a year come through our ships. For myself, I'd never heard of Mercy Ships at all until 1993. One of their ships visited the UK at the time and was open up for tours, and so I took a 1-hour tour of one of our ships in the past, and I thought, yeah, you know, I was young at the time, and I thought, yeah, I'd like to do something like this. I'd like to give a few months of my time to go and help some others in this world. So I initially volunteered for 5 months, ended up staying 4 years, met my wife on board. My wife is from South Africa, so we call it the Love Boat. Lots of couples meet and marry through serving with Mercy Ships. So having met my wife on board, we actually left Mercy Ships when we first got married, and then returned a few years later. And I've been with Mercy Ships now for 20 years out of the past 26. So I have various different roles, serving on board our ships over 8 years, and then being land-based for the past 12 years here at the International Support Centre.
Wow. And so it's right there. I'm not sure if we'll see it on camera, but we could splice it over. We've got the current Mercy ship, Africa Mercy. And so tell us about the history of Africa Mercy. What was it before, and how does it get transformed into a Mercy ship?
Mercy Ships has had 5 ships in our history, 3 of them at any one time. In the early 2000s, we retired our older ships. As they get older, the maintenance costs on them just doesn't make it viable to operate them. And so we retired the older ships and replaced them with the Africa Mercy. The Africa Mercy is a 1980 build ex-Danish rail ferry called the Dronning Ingrid, or Queen Ingrid, as when it was sailing as a passenger ship between two parts of Denmark. It used to take trains on board, and retired the ship in the late 1990s. Mercer Ships bought it from the scrapyard when it was just about to be cut up for scrap metal. We spent a few years renovating it. It took quite a little bit longer than what we anticipated. But what we did is we took what were the rail decks, we split the deck in half because it was a double height deck, and kind of gave us a blank canvas to build the hospital that we wanted on board. And so since 2007, the Africa Mercy has been sailing as our only Mercy ship, and then in the future we look to grow to more ships.
And so on Africa Mercy, how many, like, what is in the ship? So there's cabin, I mean, they have to live there, they have to cook food, there's obviously surgery centers. So tell us about inside the ship.
The Africa Mercy really is a floating city. It's a mini city. So on board we have the state-of-the-art hospital with 5 operating rooms, all the support services such as histology, radiology, sterilising of surgical instruments, etc. to support the operating rooms. And then on the other side of that same deck is all the hospital wards. So we have an intensive care unit, and we have 82 beds in the hospital ward. But as well as the hospital, it's also a hotel for all of our crew. So cabins for 400 crew living on board. We also have 30 families volunteering. So particularly if you're in the maritime world, you're used to leaving your family for 2 to 3 months at a time and going working commercially on board commercial cargo ships or cruise ships. But the pleasure of serving with Mercer Ships is you can actually, if you're filling some of those types of positions, senior positions on board, you get to bring your family with you. And so there's a full school system, from preschool right through graduation. It's a fully accredited school system on board. And so every day on board Africa Mercy, 55 children go to school every day. We also have a bank on board, a post office, a hair salon. So everything it takes to not only support our crew, but also the entire hospital as well, is self-contained within the ship. We actually call it the controlled environment. That's the benefit of bringing a ship into some of the poorest nations in the world, is that we have this fully controlled environment on the doorstep of Africa, where we can provide the highest level of care to the poorest of the poor.
I mean, it's really the only way you could do it, right?
Yeah, it is. There's lots of other organisations that do some phenomenal work operating some of the land-based clinics, but the pleasure of having a ship is if there's unrest within country, political, whatever, then if we needed to, thankfully we've never had to do this, but we could sail away. But we also don't want the host nation to become dependent on our services that we provide. So the pleasure of having a ship is we can come into port, provide the care and the training for the 10 months that we're in country, and then we can sail away. So the country doesn't become totally dependent on Mercer Ships. They become dependent on their own healthcare infrastructure and kind of raising the level of the healthcare infrastructure through the training programs that we provide, and then we can sail away at the end of the 10 months.
Wow. And I know when we were talking before, and we probably have some of the footage, but what I really admire about the organization is how much of it is volunteer work, how much is donated. You guys run a lean organization, not to name other nonprofits, but we've all seen news stories about CEOs of nonprofits making millions of dollars. And so what does the Mercy Ships, where does the donated money go? Because I know you guys are very lean, very focused on making sure as much of every dollar possible is going to the right causes. So tell us about that.
So Mercer Ships has been growing our donor base over the years, as any non-profit would. The more funds we raise, the more people we can help, and the more money that we can save in resupplying the ship. We have lots of corporate partners that provide a lot of the donated products that we use on board ship, whether it's equipment or consumables. And so with our donor base, we want to maximize the donor dollar. And so for that purpose, all of the volunteers on board the ship, every crew member volunteers their time. So all the way from the captain to people that cook the food on board to any other type of position on board the ship, they're volunteering their time. In fact, our volunteers not only volunteer their time and donate it, but they pay for the pleasure of working for us. Imagine your staff coming into URComped on a Monday morning and saying, "There you go, boss, there's my salary, and
I'm going to try that out.
I'm going to pay for the pleasure of working for you. It's a great business model, but that's how Mercy Ships operates. So our crew pay a monthly crew fee of about $700 per month, and that covers their board and lodging. And that means any donations that come into the organisation doesn't go to cover any of the crew members' costs, but it goes straight to the people that we're providing services for, whether they are patients receiving a free surgery or whether they are people that we are training in our healthcare programs. That's the way we make the donor dollar go the furthest.
Wow. And obviously what you guys are doing in these nations is changing lives. So maybe, when you guys are moving, when Mercy Ships is moving to a new port, like, how does word get out to the communities there? Tell us about kind of leading up, you guys arrive, what happens, like how our lives change, like just walk me through that process, because it's so, I can imagine the excitement of somebody that has a cleft lip or has something like that, just thinking there's hope. So.
So Mercy Ships actually has a target region of West and Central Africa. Most of those nations fall at the bottom of the United Nations Human Development Index. So it's a ranking by the UN of every country in the world. And the countries that fall at the bottom of the UN Human Development Index tend to have challenges, particularly within the healthcare infrastructure throughout the country. And they have many other challenges as well. So we have, within that target region, we specifically focus on certain countries within the region there. And we start working with a country 2 years before we actually send a ship into country. So we work with the president and the government to be invited to bring our ship in country. We do a full assessment of all the major hospitals 2 years before the ship even arrives in the port to find out what services are available in country and how we can tailor our programs to really meet the need, rather than sailing in for 10 months, doing some great work, and then sailing away and then giving ourselves a pat on the back to say, haven't done a great job. Our goal is really to empower the locals. And so we do an immense amount of assessment work even before the ship arrives in the port. In addition to that, we have a team arriving in country about 4 months before the ship actually arrives in the port, who are living in the country there, working with the government, working with other partners to promote the type of surgeries that we do. Most people would class Mercy Ships as a hospital ship. We're actually a specialised surgical unit, as I would class it as. And so we focus on eye surgery, so cataracts from the eyes. We do maxillofacial surgeries, which is cleft lip, cleft palate surgeries, removal of large facial tumours. We also do an orthopaedic program for paediatrics, so bowed legs, club feet. We do general surgery, so goiters and hernias. The other surgeries that we do are plastic surgery, so burns contractures are very common, unfortunately, where people have severe burns to the skin and lose movement of limbs and arms, legs, etc. from severe burns. And then finally we do a women's health program for ladies that have had no access to type of maternal health care during pregnancy. And so they're the surgical programs that we focus on. And so our advanced team work with local hospitals, we work with cell phone companies to do text blasts, through TV, radio, newspapers, and the types of surgeries that we do provide. And then we rent a facility away from the ship that we host to what we call a medical screening day. So within 2 weeks of the ship arriving in port, we have this medical screening day. Sometimes we have 5,000 or 6,000 people lining up. And we pre-screen all those in one day. The ones that we can help, we give a card to come back to the ship for the free life-changing surgery. But then our other goal is really to reach the people that have no access to any type of medical care. And so along with the mass screening day that we do in country, we also send out teams way out into the bush to screen in other locations around the country, to bring people in from the interior, and we work with the government as well to provide some transportation to get them to the ship. So our goal is not only just the capital city or the port city, but it's really targeting the whole nation. So it's a very complex way of operating. With each country we have a 5-year country engagement plan. So starts with the presidential level of getting the protocol agreement signed to allow us to berth the ship free of charge, for instance. All of our volunteers flying in country don't need visas, etc. But then after the ship's been in country for the 10 months, we also do other training and capacity building programs once the ship has left, And then at the end of the 5 years, we do a full evaluation of every program that we've done. Because like any other organisation, we want to learn and grow and see what works well and what doesn't work well, and keep tweaking our programs for the future so we can help more people.
So Mercy Ships has been around for over 40 years. How many lives would you say has been impacted directly with Mercy Ships?
Over 40 years, we've impacted the lives of over 1.3 million people. We've delivered services valued at over $1 billion US. So our impact has been phenomenal. We've had some great partners to allow us to do that, and it will only grow in the future. Our goal is to serve even more people, not only annually, but certainly as we train more people, then they can provide a higher level of care to their own people and kind of grow that impact, even without a Mercy ship in the port.
And so where is Mercy Ship, where is Africa Mercy right now?
Currently, the Africa Mercy is finishing a 10-month field service in the port of Conakry, Guinea, West Africa. From there, we will sail to shipyard for annual maintenance. So every June, July, the ship has maintenance done on the vessel itself. And then in August, we arrive into Dakar, Senegal. And we'll be there till June of 2020. Dakar is really, personally, has a special place in my heart. It was my first port with Mercy Ships 26 years ago. So we've never had a Mercy Ships back into Dakar. So we're looking forward to being there and serving the people of Senegal.
Wow. So obviously we're meeting because URComped. We're going to start donating all of our gear, our lucky shirts, everything that gets sold. 100% of the proceeds is going to go to Mercy Ships. But what about individuals that want to get involved and help out? Like, what are some ways people can do that?
We love building partnerships with companies like yourself. Our goal is to build a win-win partnership with every partner that we engage with. And so thank you ever so much for the opportunity to partner with you in this way and have the proceeds from the branded merchandise going to support our programs. We couldn't do what we do without partners like yourself. But for individuals, there's many different ways in which they can engage with us, whether it's their company or whether they have a family foundation or whether it's just them as individual partners. They can go to mercyships.org. There's lots of different ways on our website that you can engage with us. You actually make a donation directly online, or if you have friends or family that are interested in volunteering with us, you can apply directly on the website as well for a position on board our ships.
Well, Russ, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be able to help out such a worthy cause, and we're excited to help in every way we can, and just excited to keep learning more about Mercy Ships and help out more.
We appreciate the partnership. Lives have been transformed through this partnership, and we want to be able to provide feedback to yourselves that you can provide to all of your clients of the impact of their support.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
There we go.
All right.